to hate Star Wars more than the fans themselves. Apparently, the original trilogy is outdated, the prequels are awful, and we all pretend like the sequels don't even exist.
I fly now? I fly now!
Well, buckle up, guys, because I'm about to blow your mind. You're all gonna kill me when I say this, but I love all Star Wars movies. I'm sorry, but it's true. That's right, I love them all. I love The Phantom Menace, Rise of Skywalker, all of them. And not just the men, but the women and the children too. Wait, hold up, that came out wrong. Huh? Wait! That being said, there's definitely an unprecedented amount of hate for the sequel trilogy. Some people are even saying that the sequels are worse films than the prequels. And that's kind of ridiculous. Remember when I said 2 seconds ago that I love all Star Wars movies? As much as I love the prequels, I can't deny that they're bad films. There are all kind of things wrong with the prequel trilogy that people seem to be in denial about. They're very poorly written, and while the fight scenes were cool, some didn't hold up at all. But the prequels did exceptionally well with creating the larger world of Star Wars that we all know and love. While the original trilogy did a great job of doing that as well, it was limited by the technology of its time, and introduced all kinds of species and worlds that we've never seen before. Although the movies themselves on their own aren't very good, the prequels still managed to do one thing right, making Star Wars cool as hell. And don't even get me started on John Williams. This man carried the whole freaking trilogy on his back.
My back!
The original trilogy is the least controversial of the bunch, although it does have its problems. We're not gonna go there. And then there are the sequel films. Say what you will about these movies, but you can't deny that on their own, they're really solid films told through the visions of great directors. There are undeniably problems that each film suffers from, but that's to be expected. These films had exceptionally high expectations considering we hadn't had a Star Wars movie in 10 years. They're all visually gorgeous films with top-of-the-line cinematography, and it's criminal that no one seems to acknowledge its beauty.
I didn't know there was this much green in the whole galaxy.
The sequel trilogy is composed by John Williams, who created unique scores for the characters, and they're incredibly catchy. There's a feeling of magic about these films that the directors capture better than Lucas, or any of the previous live-action Star Wars directors. Above all else, they're inspiring. They tell you that you can be a nobody and still be a somebody. They tell you that everyone, even the most admirable leaders, aren't perfect and make mistakes. They tell you that no matter what you did, you can still pick yourself back up and face the mistakes of your past. As much as I love the prequel trilogy for its epic fight sequences and its deep dive into the lore of Star Wars, none of Lucas's films had thematic meaning. The prequel trilogy were the stories that Lucas had envisioned as he wrote the original trilogy, but he executed them very poorly.
You are in my very soul, tormenting me.
The sequel films are similar in the sense that the directors were given creative freedom to tell their unique vision for each movie. I should also clarify what I mean. The prequel movies have prominent themes of love, hatred, fear of loss, and entitlement, and those are strong themes, but they don't mean anything to the audience. There are no meaningful or compelling messages the movies try to tell the audience. Even the original trilogy has meaningful messages, such as the good and even the worst kinds of people, and the need for good people to stand up and take action against the corrupt. Before I get ahead of myself, I should also be clear that these are not perfect films either. They suffer from a lack of a cohesive story between each film, which resulted in the final film not feeling like a solid payoff. However, the point of this video is to explain why these films are better than you think they are. We're going to go through each of the 3 films to talk about the faults and what makes them great films. With that being said, let's get started.
I don't know about you guys, but damn, that gave me some goosebumps right here. Right in the feels. It's videos like this that gave me hope that there are fans that actually acknowledge and appreciate the sequel trilogy, despite it having flaws and mistakes just like its predecessors before. Like in the original trilogy, there are mistakes. The prequel trilogy, there are mistakes. There's mistakes in Star Wars, and nothing can be perfect. Nothing is perfect in any of these films, spin-offs, TV show, nothing. And if I can go back in time, I remember that everyone used to hate to death the prequel trilogy. Nobody liked the first one, the second one. Everybody would just talk about Revenge of the Sith. That is the only good Star Wars movie then. Let's fast forward to 2012 when Disney bought Star Wars, and wow, now it's praised as being the best trilogy out there, when in reality it wasn't. What a quick shift of waves all of a sudden. One change in power and it changed Star Wars forever. That's a fact. Kathleen Kennedy came in the picture and everyone thought Star Wars was ruined. And the contrary, it was never ruined to begin with. It had good direction, good stories. Everything George Lucas would have wanted, even if he sometimes doesn't agree with it, which I respect that. But still, there is a beginning, middle, and end. And it gone through the same thing just like the prequel trilogy has gone through too as well. And I've talked about this in my last video as well, so I'm going to talk about it again, about how the sequels follow through that same ideology, how it goes through changes that people will never understand. I understand the sequel trilogy. Fans out there just don't want to go back to rewatch the movies to see what the movies is actually telling them. That's why the sequel trilogy is different from the prequel trilogy. That's why a lot of people hate it, because it's different, it's new. It doesn't cater just to a new generation of Star Wars fans, but it also caters to those hardcore fans too, even though they want to say how terrible it is and how it's gone too political and feminine, even though in Star Wars it's been always feminine. The direction in Star Wars has always been the same. The message is out there for those who actually understand what the message is trying to convey. Everything the Donovan 137 said, I totally agree. I just like all the films. And the only reason why the sequels get the hate that it gets is because what? Because there's a relationship with a villain and a hero, Rey and Kylo, a Jedi and a Sith, who are in love, which has never been seen before, maybe in the expanded universe if I can go there. The idea of cloning Sith and Jedi, which has been a reference to Star Wars The Force Unleashed 2, for those of you who have played the game. Oh, we can't forget about Life Train. Yeah, that's a thing too. That's from a video game as well. But the callbacks to George Lucas's Star Wars is there. You just gotta really scratch through it to see it. And I like that. The idea of the Force evolving. Here's a perfect example right here that many fans don't even see. In episode 3, y'all remember when Obi-Wan was talking to that one tall dude? Well, in The Last Jedi, in the fight of Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker, Luke does the same thing. I'll show you.
Fighter back to the ship. Tell Cody I've made contact.
Is he bringing additional warriors? He didn't say. See you around, kid.
Oh, but of course, some prequel fans and some haters may say, oh no, that's just dumb, it's not true. Well, it is true, you see it, it's right there. Many out there may say, oh, Luke is a Kermit, he's weak. Hell no, he's the smartest Jedi out there. He's learned from the best, and bam, he saved the rebellion by doing this instant transmission trick from Obi-Wan Kenobi himself. Just think about it for a moment. Think about how much Force energy he had to use to get from where he was all the way to Crate, millions of light years away. So there's no denying Luke Skywalker ain't dumb. He's just that damn good. Many argue that they ruined the original trilogy characters. No. If they went out like heroes. Look at Leia. She sacrificed herself for Ben. Look at Han. He sacrificed himself to get back his son, Ben. Luke Skywalker, well, I already talked to you guys about that. So, my point is, the sequel trilogy is the gift that keeps on giving. And for those who do not understand, they're always going to miss out and hate what they don't understand. The movies themselves can go toe-to-toe against the prequel trilogy anytime. Can they beat the prequel trilogy? No. Can it go down in a debate and be defended? You damn right. There are many reasons why the sequel trilogy can still be defended and talked about for many years to come. And even those who are haters, who despite hate it to death, are still complaining and crying on the internet about how much they hate it and they hate Disney. Hey, I always say that even though you hate it, there's no denying you can't stop other people from loving it. And that kills y'all. It kills y'all because Disney Star Wars is actually pretty good and can go toe to toe against George Lucas's Star Wars. The fact that it could get a bad reaction, a reaction from anyone who is pro Lucas, that says a lot. It's like the ultimate heel. They boo, they scream hate when they see the sequel trilogy. But it's better to get a reaction than no reaction whatsoever. And there could be many videos on the internet about why the sequels suck, why they didn't live up to the expectation, why they could have done better on the writing and all that good stuff. But it's still getting talked about. When it's not talked about, it means it's out of touch. It is irrelevant. It is dead. Star Wars, and little do they realize that they are doing exactly the same thing as when George Lucas was in charge and the prequels came out, is having that same reception. History repeats itself. Nothing ever changes in Star Wars. The fans change, they get more toxic, they get meaner, it only gets worse. Time will only tell if the sequels eventually will get that same treatment as the prequels. And I want to say that maybe in a few years, the sequels will get the same love as the prequels. But I just don't see that happening. Because there's so much hate behind it. What could that be? They hate Kathleen Kennedy. What's the bandwagon? Everything that Disney does is terrible. Which, in reality, it isn't. That's why, till this day, your supreme leader will still be out here to defend the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And I don't care how many fanboys, toxic fanboys, want to come at me and say the prequels are the best. I'm just going to tell you what I've told everyone else. The prequels aren't as good as you think. And I know that for a fact because many years back, you weren't the biggest fan of the prequel trilogy. You were screaming, "Get out, George Lucas." That's all I heard. And now that he's gone, you want him back? So what? That he could direct another trilogy you guys can trash on? Oh man, that's crazy talk. The sequel trilogy is here to stay, and I don't care how many of you guys start a petition to try to decanonize the sequel trilogy, it's here to stay. As soon as they go in depth with the sequel trilogy and give it the same treatment as the prequel trilogy, you'll have no choice but to admit that it was actually pretty good. You're gonna fall in line. Just like you guys have before with the prequels, you guys are gonna fall in line with the sequel trilogy because that's how it works. Eventually, you're gonna love what you hate. You can only hate for so long that when you sit down to actually rewatch all these films, you're gonna be like, oh shit, maybe it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. You're gonna be asking yourself, what the hell was I hating the sequel trilogy for? It's not the prequel trilogy, but damn, I can still sit and watch these movies. You can forget about Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, JJ. Strip that all away. Ignore all that shit and just focus on the films. And you're gonna see what I see. Then you're gonna be like, oh! But until you guys don't see what I see, what the millions out there see, you're always gonna hate what you don't understand, as I've mentioned before. In other words, you're just gonna be lost every time. You're gonna be screaming, "There's a wolf coming to the village!" There's no wolf. It's all in your mind. You just gotta actually sit there to analyze the movies. And when you find out how cool it is, come back to my comment section and talk to me about how cool the sequel trilogy is. Until then, keep on hating, cause the sequel trilogy, as I've said a dozen times in this video already, it is here to stay. And I'm happy that the sequel trilogy is still getting talked for many years to come. For being not one of the most hated, but one of the most cherished and loved trilogies out there. And that's all I gotta say. Now there's one more video I want to share with you guys, another YouTuber that I was watching, shout out to him.
Last Jedi is probably the most fan-base splitting movie of all time. When this film came out, you either loved it or you hated it. There was basically no in between. It was either the best movie ever made or the worst piece of shit garbage bullshit ever since God first said let there be light. Nowadays, of course, 3.5 years later, most people are a lot more realistic. Most of the former group have accepted the flaws of The Last Jedi and don't view it as a perfect movie anymore, while some of the latter group are more accepting of the movie. However, an unbridled hatred towards this movie and this trilogy in general, and all the people who like these movies, still exists on the internet today. That is why I have dedicated most of this channel to defending these movies and the people who like them, and fighting back at some of these relentless haters, from bad to downright non-existent arguments to people not even being analytically critical anymore, just assholes. Now of course you're allowed to dislike these movies, but the people I'm talking about are the people who just take it way too far. However, recently due to my Why It's Great series, I may have been portraying these movies as masterpieces, which they definitely are not. I may be a massive Star Wars fan, but I'm also a fan of the art of film, and therefore I must put aside my own feelings and biases and judge these movies not as my precious babies, but as actual movies. So that is why today I will be giving my completely honest thoughts on the Star Wars sequels. Now this video won't be overly analytical and I won't be going scene for scene, it's just my quick opinions on the trilogy and its quality, to show all of you that my love for these movies isn't blinded by passion. But anyways, let's just get into it. So the first thing I will say about the sequels is that they're so much better than what people give them credit for. But they're also not the heavenly divine pieces of cinema that my videos occasionally paint them out to be. They have flaws. Some even have a lot of flaws. The Force Awakens lacks some much needed exposition and backstory. Now that statement might seem a bit confusing since we literally have 6 previous movies of backstory, but we don't really know how the galaxy went from being great and celebratory to being in full-on war again. Just a bit more of a transition between Return of the Jedi and this movie would have been great. It also doesn't try anything new. The movie aligns itself very closely to the familiar and the sentimental, which works against it, but it also works in its favor. And lastly, there are some minor inconsistencies in the writing with a little bit too much fan service at times. However, The Last Jedi steps it up a little bit in terms of flaws. We of course have the infamous Canto Bite scene that feels very disconnected at times to the rest of the movie and provides the wrong character arc for Finn. And speaking of Finn, The Last Jedi does mess up a couple of the characters. I know some of you guys would say Luke, Holdo, and Poe too, but yeah, you're just wrong. Their stories make complete sense and they are engaging, whereas Rose feels completely out of place in the story with cringy lines, and Finn is learning about shit that he already knows. A child soldier does not need to be told that war is bad. This movie also suffers from an overabundance of jokes that collide with the more serious tone, and again some inconsistencies in the script. These negatives make up a decent portion of the movie, so they should be deal breakers, right? See, now that's where you're wrong. But we'll get into that in just a bit. The Rise of Skywalker makes the big mistake of getting intimidated by all the hate and backlash The Last Jedi received, and therefore it retcons most of the interesting aspects in that movie. This is easily its biggest mistake, and it really felt like I'd just been punched in the gut when I first saw it. However, The Rise of Skywalker also falls victim to bad pacing, which just makes the movie feel like it's rushing to get through its plot, and this leads to a less than satisfying climax that leaves a lot to be desired. This movie also fails at providing interesting stories for characters like Poe and Finn, and again it creates some plot holes. However, for everything that these movies do wrong, they do multiple things right. All of them have stunning visuals, not just practical effects and CGI, but also set designs, costumes, and cinematography. All 3 of them also benefit from solid dialogue and acting, and even the occasional great performance. The action scenes are usually done very well, and the movies overall have a lot of charm. If we look at the movies individually, then The Force Awakens does a great job of setting up its characters. Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo Ren all have great introductions and arcs in this film, and it causes us to stay engaged with their stories all the way throughout the trilogy. And along with a very well written plot, that stays both fresh and familiar at the same time, The Force Awakens stands out beautifully. The Last Jedi manages to tell a complex story with themes and concepts that will intrigue anyone who enjoys meaningful narratives. The Last Jedi also succeeds at always turning its weaknesses into strengths. And even a sequence like Canto Bight provides some interesting storytelling and world building. Furthermore, The Last Jedi shines brightest in how it handles Luke, Rey, Kylo, and Poe. I've talked about these characters many times before, so I won't repeat myself, but they're wonderfully written. The Rise of Skywalker, despite its many flaws, manages to formulate an engaging story for Rey and Kylo. These two characters are fantastic all the way throughout the trilogy and are easily two of my favorites in all of Star Wars. This movie also has good dynamics between the characters and some very emotional moments. Overall, my favorite movie in this trilogy is The Last Jedi. Big surprise. It may have more flaws than The Force Awakens, but it also just reaches greater heights. An argument can of course be made for The Force Awakens, and that's up to the individual. But in my opinion, these two are the standouts in the trilogy. And that being said, The Rise of Skywalker is definitely the weakest one, but far from the worst Star Wars movie. Naturally, it's better than the Holiday Special and the Clone Wars movie, but it's even far more enjoyable to watch than the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. At least for me. It's a well-made trilogy, and I think it's criminally underrated. From my own observations, the sequels are movies for people who value emotional connections and engaging stories very highly, while people who don't like the sequels are often people who value consistent writing without messy plots. These are of course generalizations, and it's way more complicated than this, but these are just trends that I have noticed around the internet, and it's actually pretty interesting because it works in a lot of situations. But anyways, those were my honest thoughts on the Star Wars sequels. I could go.
Well, there you have it, my friends. And before I conclude this video, there is one more thing that I love about the sequel trilogy that I really want to share with you guys. One that hardly anyone talks about, but I want to go ahead and talk about it with you guys. In Star Wars The Last Jedi, when Kylo Ren killed the Supreme Leader, I was very happy. Because number one, he did something Anakin Skywalker couldn't. Beat the Supreme Leader. Anakin's all-time dream was to kill the Emperor and be the almighty Supreme Chancellor, or the Supreme Leader of the galaxy. Kylo Ren did it while number one, having all his limbs, number two, while he was still young and very powerful. But when Anakin had the opportunity to do it, he didn't, because he had a fight against Obi-Wan Kenobi in Revenge of the Sith. These are two differences that I love about Kylo Ren and Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker. Kylo Ren killed his master, while Anakin, aka Darth Vader, didn't kill his master and was under his control for many, many years. And by then he has lost his limbs, his wife, he lost everything. Kylo Ren, on the other hand, he broke free immediately. He catched up. He said, you know what, I'm gonna finish him right now before I lose my limbs, get in a mechanical suit, become old, and have to kill my son in the future. Kylo Ren understood the assignment that he can never be under control of somebody stronger than him. He understood that as soon as he got his ass zapped to the floor. That's when he realized he had to kill him. Sith always betray each other. That is a line in Star Wars The Force Unleashed. One that has stuck with me for many years. And it makes sense why Kylo Ren killed Snoke in The Last Jedi. That's why when I look back at Kylo Ren compared to Anakin or Darth Vader, I'm like, damn, Kylo Ren had it better than Anakin Skywalker. Anakin was promised he was going to get his wife saved. Nope. Your limbs were cut by your master. Your ass is mine. On the other hand, history would have been different if Anakin would have killed Obi-Wan. Then he might have a chance, but he never got the opportunity. But these are two differences and details that I like about control. Kylo Ren broke free first. Anakin was never able to be broken free until Return of the Jedi. And by that time, he was when Luke Skywalker reminded him that his father is still alive and he could be brought back to the light side, which was a long fight to do, but at the end, Anakin Skywalker was back, Darth Vader was dead, by the end of Return of the Jedi. For many of you who don't understand, I'll put it to you like this. Kylo Ren is what Anakin Skywalker wanted to be in Revenge of the Sith. He wanted to kill Emperor Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith. He couldn't do that. Kylo Ren was privileged the opportunity to kill his master, and he did what any opportunist would do. Oh, but Kylo, why didn't Vader just kill this master in episodes 4, 5, or 6? He couldn't, because then he'd be by himself. He had no one. He didn't knew that his son or daughter was alive until episode 5. Kylo Ren, on the other hand, he had a lot of people that he loved still alive. Well, that is until he killed Han. Then he was trying to kill his mother, but his mother's still alive. That is, then he found his new purpose, which was Rey, trying to get her to be on his side and still have it all. Anakin, he had it all, but just no one to share it with until he found out that his son is alive. But by then, Vader was old. Plain and simple. Kylo Ren, on the other hand, he was young. He wanted everything. And if you don't believe me, watch the beginning of Rise of Skywalker. He wanted even more power than he had already. He already had the First Order. But then he went with Palpatine and he had the Final Order. He had 2 armies, 2 set armies. He's power hungry. That's what makes Vader and Kylo Ren unique, different. That's why I love the sequel trilogy, of how Kylo Ren is a parallel version of Anakin, and how Anakin is a parallel version of Kylo Ren. You guys know what I'm saying. That's what makes Kylo Ren's character unique in the sequel trilogy. That's why he is the most interesting character in this trilogy. That's why Anakin Skywalker is the most interesting character in the prequel trilogy. The complex, the drive to greatness, power, to have it all, is what makes these 2 characters one of the best Star Wars characters out there. And many people don't want to admit that the sequel trilogy doesn't have that, but it does have that it factor to have really good characters. Just like Rey too, and I could go on and so forth about how these characters are good. It's things like this that make me love and appreciate the sequel trilogy even more. I'm not saying it's better than the prequel trilogy that I hated. No, I love the prequel trilogy. But the sequel trilogy just does something more unique than the prequel trilogy does. But in the end, both are great. And I said it, and I'll say it again. The sequel trilogy can stand toe-to-toe with the prequel trilogy. For the amount of love, character, respect, and drive that all these characters go through and make us want to watch the sequel trilogy is why most of us love the sequel trilogy. It's the characters' arc and stories and journeys that make us want to come back over and over and rewatch again and be like, damn, that was pretty good. I like that fight. I like that callback. I love the balls that they put in this acting. I love Adam Driver's acting. The lightsaber fights, although not as fast as the prequel trilogy, but they still kick some ass. Lightsaber fights that will be remembered to many years to come and be like, holy shit, a Jedi and a Sith are working together to kick some Patreon guards' ass. A fight where Rey and Kylo go at it again, and Kylo's like, I ain't gonna get my ass kicked again. It's time to put this bitch in her place. Movies packed with emotion that will have us crying, be mad, laugh, just like the prequel trilogy, just like the original trilogy. There's no denying that. The sequels are here to stay. And I could say proudly, I love the sequel trilogy. So, you could pucker up and kiss where my 2 cheeks meet, because the Star Wars sequel trilogy is the best Star Wars trilogy out there. Change my mind. Come at me. And this is where I'm going to wrap my video by saying thank you very much for watching my video. Like, comment, share, subscribe to the First Order. Goal is 2,000. And as always, my fellow nerds, may the Force be with y'all. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.